This is the moment armed police closed in on Britain's first all-female terrorist plot. It followed phone intercepts and close surveillance. Other intelligence included this CCTV in South London. It shows her checking locations around the MI6 building. And then there was this intercepted phone call where Bular, her sister and her mother had a coded conversation in which they described the planned attack as a tea party.
Imagine a world where childhood innocence shatters into cold-blooded violence, where teenage girls commit crimes so shocking they send ripples of fear through entire communities. Behind prison walls today sit some of the youngest and most dangerous offenders, girls who turned ordinary suburban nights into scenes of horror. What drove them to cross the line from adolescence into murder? Was it jealousy, rage, or something much darker hidden in their psychological makeup? In this video, we pull back the curtain on the untold stories of teenage murderers. Young women whose names became synonymous with betrayal, violence, and manipulation. Through gripping investigations, chilling trial testimony, and emotional sentencing hearings, these cases reveal how fragile the boundary can be between youthful rebellion and irreversible tragedy. We will uncover the shocking transformations of these so-called girls gone wild, from high school hallways to prison cells. Their stories are more than crimes. They are warnings, lessons in justice, and haunting reminders of how evil can wear the face of innocence. This is not just another true crime story. This is the dark reality of teenage murderers behind bars. Case 1. Trinity Shockley. 18-year-old Trinity Shockley, known online as Jamie or Dex, found herself at the center of a chilling investigation when authorities uncovered a plan she had allegedly been nurturing for a year. A school shooting dubbed Parkland Part 2, scheduled for Valentine's Day at Mooresville High School. Online conversations, Discord chats in which Jamie claimed, "I have an AR-15, and Parkland Part 2, of course. I've been planning this for a year," created an eerie echo of past tragedies and revealed a dangerous obsession. That alias hides an 18-year-old student wrestling with rage, isolation, and fixation on mass shooters like Nicholas Cruz and Dylan Roof. Her room, discovered during search, displayed posters, buttons, a shrine of killers, notebooks filled with violent scribbles, and a zero-day movie poster, connecting her thinking pattern to prior school shootings. A tip to the FBI's Sandy Hook tip line triggered coordination with local law enforcement. A search of her home unearthed magazines, notes, and digital footprints that painted a deeply unsettling picture. Shockley's legal proceedings moved forward almost immediately. Charged with conspiracy to commit murder and 2 counts of intimidation, threat to commit terrorism, the case unfolded through initial bond hearings where the court weighed the scale of risk against the possibility of release. Shockley, clad in jail attire, displayed no emotion as prosecutors detailed the disturbing items found in her bedroom. Her fixation on school shooters, her writing that expressed hatred toward others, and her declaration of love for Nicholas Cruz. All part of the trial testimony that painted a portrait of a troubled mind teetering on the edge. Defense arguments offered that her online posts were jokes, rooted in bullying, grief, and mental health struggles, particularly after she survived a hit-and-run crash that left her with brain injury and lasting trauma. During the sentencing hearing stage, mostly procedural since no trial has yet begun, the judge weighed bond requests, with prosecutors demanding hundreds of thousands in surety and cash, citing public danger. Defense seeking modest bond and restrictions, citing concerns about mental health and a possible overreaction. Psychological evaluations required by the court underscore the importance of understanding the mind behind these threats, an essential component of both legal fairness and potential rehabilitation. Case 2. Safa Bular. At just 16, a teenage girl's life took a chilling turn that would shock the nation and reshape our understanding of radicalization. Within that moment, she went from feeling unseen, teased for her appearance and yearning for belonging, to becoming the central figure in Britain's first-ever all-female terrorism plot. From her earliest intrigue after witnessing the 2015 Paris attacks to dark online connections and secret plans targeting iconic London landmarks, the investigation unfolds like a thriller. But this is a true story. This psychological profile reveals a young individual drawn into extremist ideology through manipulation by an older recruiter. She met a UK-born Islamic State fighter online, entered a virtual marriage with him, and discussed wearing a suicide belt. Her path from curiosity to deadly intent clear in retrospect. Law enforcement, however, had already flagged her when she attempted to travel to Syria. After authorities seized her passport at the airport, she shifted her attention. No longer seeking martyrdom abroad, she began plotting an attack on home soil. Behind the scenes, covert police and MI5 role-players infiltrated her communications. Unaware she was being monitored, she detailed her desire to obtain weapons, grenades, firearms, and debated targets like the British Museum. The depth of her online discussions, her preparedness, and psychological detachment raised alarm bells. Here was someone not merely influenced, but acting with deadly determination. When the authorities moved in, arrests revealed a disturbing family dynamic. Her older sister, driven by her influence, and their mother, both became implicated. Together, they formed a coordinated cell, an unprecedented example of what was described as a dysfunctional family radicalized from within. In courtroom legal proceedings that followed, the jury heard how surveillance captured not just planning, but practical rehearsals and reconnaissance, buying knives near Parliament, mapping routes, practicing stabbing, all leading up to a foiled attack days before its intended execution. In that trial testimony, prosecutors painted a picture of manipulation meeting vulnerability. A teenager groomed online, whose youth and unstable upbringing were powerful contextual motivators. Defense lawyers spoke of abusive family influences and grooming, underscoring that she may have seen death as escape. Rather than fighting for a cause, she sought relief from pain. The psychological profile emerges from these conflicting narratives. Was she a calculating extremist or a tragic victim of indoctrination? Ultimately, she was convicted on charges including planning suicide bombing and preparing terrorist attacks. The sentencing hearing delivered a life sentence with a minimum term of 13 years, a landmark verdict for the UK's youngest female terrorism offender. But the story didn't end there. The appeal shifted the justice-related themes even further. In April 2019, the Court of Appeal found that her youth, grooming, and exploitation required more weight in sentencing. Her minimum term was reduced to 11 years, signaling that courts must balance accountability with recognition of manipulation and vulnerability. Case 3. Kylo Coplan Anderson. Within moments, you're plunged into the hush of a rural Nebraska home, where the shock of a teenage secret shatters the silence. In November 2023, a 16-year-old girl delivered a baby alone in her bedroom, completely unseen by her family, and in the same breath, took the life of her newborn. That chilling turn forms the instant hook of this story, drawing in anyone who craves understanding of how and why something so unfathomable occurred. The initial investigation unfolded almost immediately. A first responder arrived at the Gordon home to a scene the father described as a stillbirth. But the mother's tears told a harsher truth. She believed her daughter had harmed the infant. Investigators noted marks consistent with an attack, and that a knife had gone missing earlier. When the weapon turned up later, bloodied and hidden in a closet, the case spiraled into something far darker. Those early investigative moments crackle with tension and invite the audience to piece together what unfolded behind closed doors. Defense testimony revealed layers of trauma, abuse that left the teen grappling with post-traumatic stress disorder and major depressive disorder, conditions rooted in deep emotional wounds. At just 15, she became pregnant by a 19-year-old, an illegal relationship under Nebraska's statutory rape laws. No support network stepped in. Her attorney emphasized how isolation magnified both psychological distress and the secrecy that would define her actions. In August 2024, the young defendant entered a plea of no contest to second-degree murder. In exchange, prosecutors dropped more severe charges, the initial first-degree murder charge, along with counts of child abuse resulting in death and use of a deadly weapon. The plea deal reframed the legal narrative, spotlighting the tension between retribution and recognition of her mental health struggles and victimization. Trial testimony, though not a full trial given the plea, nonetheless revealed harrowing glimpses. Voices recounting abuse, mental collapse, silence from those who might have helped. Those testimonies give the story emotional depth, encouraging empathy without excusing the act. They make viewers reflect on the complex interplay of trauma and culpability, raising questions that echo long after the video ends. When the sentencing hearing arrived in April 2025, the culmination of the story delivered another jolt. Judge Travis O'Gorman imposed a sentence of 35 to 60 years in prison. More than 533 days of time served were credited, meaning she will be in her early 50s before release becomes possible. The cold arithmetic of justice collides with the human story, a shell-shocked teen condemned by law and past pain. Case for Isabella Guzman, a suburban family home in Aurora, Colorado on the quiet evening of August 28, 2013, the kind of place where nothing should go terribly wrong. But something did. 18-year-old Isabella Guzman was discovered by her stepfather, standing in the bathroom doorway, knife in hand. Her mother lay inside, fatally stabbed. The investigation that followed would unravel a devastating tapestry of mental illness, legal nuance, and enduring questions of justice. As detectives converged, the scene was chilling, not overly graphic, but searing in its implications. Police quickly charged Isabella with first-degree murder. The psychological profile became central as court-appointed psychiatrists determined she suffered from schizophrenia, haunted by paranoid delusions. She believed the woman she was attacking was not her mother but a person named Cecilia, and that killing her would somehow save the world. Her attorneys entered a plea of not guilty by reason of insanity. A judge accepted that plea, based on compelling medical testimony that this young woman lacked the capacity to understand right from wrong at that moment. In describing the delusions, experts recounted that Guzman did not perceive her own mother as human, experienced hallucinations, and even laughter at herself, hallmarks of a severely disordered mind. Trial testimony may be absent in the traditional sense because no jury trial followed, but the psychiatric evaluations functioned as a kind of testimony, delivered with stark clarity in court. Prosecutor George Brauchler acknowledged the weight of the psychological profile, stating that the very nature of the delusions removed criminal culpability. "We punish people who make decisions to do wrong when they knew better," he said, adding that Guzman did not know right from wrong and she could not have acted differently. His acceptance of the plea demonstrated a law enforcement strategy that blends mental health insight with legal responsibility. That led to the sentencing hearing, or more accurately, commitment hearing. Rather than prison, Guzman was sent to the Colorado Mental Health Institute in Pueblo to remain confined until professionals determined she no longer posed danger, a span that could be days, years, or the rest of her life. In the years since, themes of rehabilitation and justice remain potent. As of 2020, she spoke with the media, asserting she had been restored to health through medication. She claimed she'd suffered years of abuse at home, tied to her family's religious background, and even alleged mistreatment at the hospital itself. Despite trending conversations online and viral attention, even TikTok discussions touching on her case, she has not been released, and as recently as 2023, continued to reside at the facility. Case 5. Christina Lynn Atkins. Just after midnight on January 10, 1995, an 18-year-old high school graduate, 5 months pregnant and brimming with hopes for the future, vanished into the cold Cleveland streets. Christina Lynn Atkins disappeared without a trace. That moment, the last glimpse anyone had of her, becomes the pulse pounding at the heart of this story as the investigation unfolds through 2 decades. The investigation begins with her family's frantic reports, police canvassing West 25th Street, and the community plastering flyers across neighborhoods. The psychological profile of everyone involved hinted at normal teenage relationships, but the case grew colder by the day. The boyfriend was questioned, anxiety circulated, but without physical evidence, legal closure remained elusive. The case stagnated, slipping toward the depths of cold case files. Then, in late summer 2013, a spark reignites hope. A credible tip leads investigators and cadaver dogs to a house near Kinkle Avenue, but the search yields nothing. Yet the momentum remains. That furious determination, guided by forensic strategies and community memory, leans into broader law enforcement strategies for cold case investigation, showing the power of persistence even decades later. On October 10, 2013, a breakthrough. Remains are discovered near Interstate 90 and I-76 by a joint task force of FBI, Cleveland Police, and the Cuyahoga County Medical Examiner. The emotional weight of that discovery is immense. Finally, closure for a grieving family, as well as progress in criminal justice. The remains are confirmed as Christina's a few days later. In that moment, the investigation transitions purposefully into full-blown legal proceedings. Enter Elias Acevedo, who, in an unanticipated confession, admits to her murder and leads authorities to the remains. The psychological profile that emerges is chilling. He raped and killed Christina, his cousin's girlfriend, when she threatened to expose him. His confession brings truth and relief. A suspect, motive, and the forensic link required to reconstruct events and bring justice. In early 2014, the case moves through trial testimony. In court, family members, most heartbreakingly Christina's mother, deliver powerful words. "He doesn't realize what a beautiful person he took away from me." The emotional gravity deepens as Acevedo breaks down, saying, "I did it," though claiming he isn't a monster. Yet we know otherwise. As Acevedo's children take the stand, detailing their own abuse, the full scale of his crimes, including sexual assault and murder, unfold. That tormented portrait of the offender amplifies the gravity of this case and keeps attention riveted. Acevedo pleads guilty to hundreds of charges, including the murder of Christina and another pregnant woman. The judge delivers a sentence of 445 years without the possibility of parole, ensuring he will die in prison. The legal closure serves not just as punishment, but as a statement. The system can respond even after the passage of years. Case 6. Morgan Geyser and Anna Wire. It all begins in a seemingly normal Wisconsin suburb in May 2014, when 12-year-old friends Morgan Geyser and Anissa Wire lured their classmate Peyton Lutner into a woods under the guise of hide-and-seek, and then stabbed her 19 times. The motivation was chillingly rooted in obsession. The girls believed they would earn the favor of the fictional online figure Slender Man, whose world they had come to accept as real. From that first moment, Morgan's profile is haunting. Interrogations revealed a child with no empathy, living amid hallucinations of smoke-colored figures, imaginary friends named Maggie and Sev, and even characters like Severus Snape and Lord Voldemort. Anissa, by contrast, displayed guilt. But both maintained the act was necessary, showing how deeply distorted their moral compass had become. Peyton survived near-fatal injuries. One surgeon later revealed that if the knife had shifted by just the width of a human hair, she wouldn't have lived. The interrogation process involved careful, non-coercive questioning, and both young suspects confessed voluntarily, with Peyton's testimony further cementing the accuracy of their admissions. Both girls were charged in adult court, Morgan with attempted first-degree intentional homicide, Anissa with second-degree L. Morgan pleaded guilty under a plea deal, and both were found not guilty by reason of mental disease or defect, leading to long psychiatric institutional commitments. 40 years to life for Morgan, 25 for Anissa. Morgan was diagnosed with schizophrenia, began long-term antipsychotic treatment in 2015, and regained enough understanding to feel remorse and participate meaningfully in proceedings. Anissa's remorse and therapeutic progress also played a role in her legal resolution. The sentencing hearing reinforced society's demand for both justice and safety. Morgan was committed to the Winnebago Mental Health Institute, with periodic reevaluations to determine when or if she could safely reintegrate. Anissa was released in 2021 under strict supervision, living with her father, with GPS monitoring and no contact with Peyton until 2039. Morgan persistently petitioned for conditional release. Her efforts were denied in April 2024 due to concerns over her engagement with violent theme materials and contact with a collector of murder memorabilia. In January 2025, 3 psychologists testified that Morgan was now mentally prepared for a supervised release, concluding she no longer posed a significant threat, a testament to progress through intensive treatment and psychological monitoring. A judge ordered a release plan, intended to locate her in a group home with ongoing supervision and reevaluation. Even so, the path toward freedom proved rocky. In early 2025, the release was temporarily stalled after staff voiced concerns over Morgan's interest in a book featuring sexual sadism and her contact with the collector. Yet, the judge ultimately approved progress toward supervised reintegration, signifying a legal understanding that continued confinement could hamper long-term healing. Case 7. Morgan Amanda Leopard. What could drive a seemingly ordinary teenager to plotting murder for a stolen getaway? This is the story of Morgan Amanda Leopard. At the core of this chilling case lies a twisted dynamic. Investigation reveals that Morgan Amanda Leopard, known in court records as Morgan Leopard, was convicted alongside her then-boyfriend, Toby Lowry, for the chilling 2008 killing of 66-year-old James Thomas Stewart, a disabled man born without hands. Together they embarked on this violent robbery that escalated into murder, all in pursuit of a stolen vehicle and dreams of freedom. Leopard's outward appearance, sometimes described as baby-faced, masked a manipulative and calculating persona. Her boyfriend later characterized her as a force who guided the crime. Psychological profile techniques suggest that adolescent offenders can be highly influenced by romantic attachments combined with impulsive drives, making this case a textbook study in peer contagion and youthful recklessness turned deadly. Law enforcement built its case on forensic evidence, witness statements, and, critically, Leopard's taped confession. Her audio recording admitting involvement in attacking Stewart at his home became a pivotal piece during legal proceedings. The public, hearing her own words in that confession, was captivated by the cold clarity with which she recounted the crime. Stewart's family delivered emotional testimonies during the sentencing hearing, with his brother Mike Stewart pleading, "Every night when I go to sleep, I pray that this whole thing will be one big bizarre nightmare." That trauma-laden appeal underscored the gravity of the crime and personalized its impact. Ultimately, the court convicted Leopard of first-degree murder. Because she was under 18 at the time, the state did not seek the death penalty. Instead, she received a mandatory life prison sentence. Later, shifting legal jurisprudence around juvenile sentencing, specifically decisions that teens cannot be condemned to life without parole, prompted a resentencing. In 2016, she was resentenced to life with the possibility of parole after 25 years, aligning with evolving standards of justice that recognize the developmental differences of youth offenders. Meanwhile, Ongoing legal proceedings reflect her continuing journey through the justice system. As of March 2024, Morgan Amanda Leopard, now an inmate within Florida's penal system, filed a petition for a writ of habeas corpus, indicating persistent legal proceedings and advocacy around her case. Case 8. Nicole Jackson Maldonado. The cold evening in Florida plunges into the heart of the crisis, with adrenaline surging as a body cam voice trembles. Shots fired. She's got the AK and a shotgun. In June 2021, just outside Deltona, Florida, a 14-year-old girl named Nicole Jackson Maldonado stormed into a crime scene that would become an unnerving case study in youth violence, law enforcement strategy, and public safety. Living in a group home, Nicole had previously been charged with arson, setting multiple brush fires in her neighborhood, raising red flags that psychological intervention was needed long before guns came into play. She has a volatile mix of rebellion, trauma, possible unmet mental health needs, and a spark of aggression that escalated drastically. When she ran from the Florida United Methodist Children's Home with a 12-year-old companion, authorities were already on high alert. They broke into a residence, armed themselves with a handgun, shotgun, and even an AK-style rifle, then began firing at deputies who surrounded the home. In a harrowing standoff lasting about 30 minutes, the girl advanced, firing a shotgun at deputies, who ultimately returned fire. She was shot, then rapidly treated, her life saved under fire. Physical wounds met with urgent law enforcement aid. Although she was a minor, Nicole's case was moved to adult court. She pleaded no contest to charges including attempted first-degree murder with a firearm, burglary while armed, and criminal mischief. Rejecting an earlier plea offer in mid-2022, she eventually accepted the deal and walked into a sentencing hearing in January 2023 that would define the rest of her life. The gravity of the case was inescapable. 20 years in prison followed by 40 years probation, a term as long as a lifetime, and the echoes of that fateful evening resonating in each sentence. There was no dramatic courtroom testimony recounted in publicly available accounts, but the very act of pleading no contest stands in for what trial testimony might have revealed: calculated defiance, fear, or perhaps a cry for help. Throughout, nothing explicit or sensational is described, maintaining a brand-safe tone. Instead, the psychological analysis suggests a teen caught in a spiral, ignited by earlier arson, the lure of weapons, possibly influenced by violent media, even uttering, "I'm gonna roll this down like GTA" as the shooting began. That line alone offers a haunting window into her mindset. Threat, bravado, maybe detached from consequences. It invites viewers to ponder how a child becomes capable of such confrontation. Case 9. Scarlett Jeninson and Ratcliffe Eddy. On a cold February afternoon, as Brianna Gay hopped off the bus and walked into Culcheth Linear Park, she believed she was meeting a friend. Within seconds, the reality became far darker than anyone could imagine. In that moment, the web of premeditation woven by Scarlett Jeninson and Eddy Ratcliffe snapped shut, setting off an investigation that would expose chilling depths of planning and cruelty. Such a shocking betrayal and its calculated execution commands attention from the very first scene. Detectives from Cheshire's major investigation team moved swiftly. Within hours, they had retraced the steps. CCTV capturing movement, mobile phones seized and forensically examined, a handwritten note describing how to lure and kill, a hunting knife recovered with Brianna's blood, and thousands of deleted messages restored. This unfolding legal proceedings of gathering evidence, identifying suspects, and charging two 15-year-olds for a crime both horrific and incomprehensible turns ordinary investigative work into urgent drama. An immersive journey from crime scene to courtroom. Scarlett had meticulously plotted fantasies of murder, poisoning attempts, and even a kill list. She described the stabbing as exciting, confessed that she wanted Brianna never to leave her, and spoke of keeping body parts as tokens. Psychiatry evaluations painted Scarlett as severely lacking empathy due to conduct dissocial disorder. In contrast, Eddie struggled with a diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder and selective mutism, yet his online messages revealed dehumanizing language and transphobic intent. Both profiles demand attention, not to sensationalize, but to understand how normal-appearing teens could commit such brutality. Both defendants blamed each other in court. Scarlett portrayed herself as terrified of a sociopath, while Ratcliffe claimed to have dismissed plans as fantasy. But a jury, seeing the weight of the evidence, hearing psychiatric reports and victim impact statements, returned guilty verdicts on December 20, 2023. The courtroom drama, with shifting blame and desperate distortions, keeps tension high while grounding the story in emotional reality. At the sentencing hearing on February 2, 2024, Mrs. Justice Yip described the murder as sadistic in nature and acknowledged transphobia as a secondary motivator. Scarlett received life with a minimum of 22 years. Eddie, life with a minimum of 20 years. The judge warned that release depends on whether they remain a danger, stressing that psychopathology may explain but does not excuse. The courtroom, filled with silences and tense restraint, delivered justice with measured gravity, a reminder of the law's power to hold even youth fully accountable. Beyond the courtroom, echoes of the case continue to resonate. Ratcliffe later lost an appeal seeking reduced sentencing on grounds of immaturity, his minimum term upheld as appropriate. Justice reaffirmed that such an extreme crime cannot be softened by age alone, a crucial message for criminal justice thinking. Case 10, Jordan Jobson. Just seconds in, the camera cuts to a shadowy alley in Wallsend, Tyne and where one night changed everything. A quiet street, an unexpected encounter. Jordan Jobson, just 15, and Samantha Madgin, an 18-year-old new mother, had never met. Suddenly, their collision sparked an investigation that would haunt her family and the community. Jobson was a teenager with no known connection to her victim, suggesting a disturbing impulsivity rather than a personal vendetta. Reports later revealed she described the attack to fellow prisoners as a mistake, her tone reportedly cocky despite the severity of her crime. That chilling confidence is a window into how she processed or failed to process her actions. The investigation unfolded swiftly. Detectives traced the fatal, frenzied knife attack in August 2007. 43 stab wounds plunged into a young mother just 10 weeks after she gave birth. In court, medical details revealed devastating injuries to her lungs and a severed artery near her heart, ensuring no chance of rescue. Jobson was tried for murder, found guilty, and initially handed a life sentence with a minimum 15-year tariff. 2 appeals reduced it to 11 years. In trial testimony, Samantha's devastated mother and community members conveyed the human cost. A tiny infant left motherless, a family broken in an instant. The sentencing hearing was not just about rehab, it was a public reckoning. The judge weighed the gravity of a random, brutal act by someone still in adolescence. Could rehabilitation be possible? Jobson's behavior while serving reportedly flippant and dismissive, even during a return to an open prison on day release, raised doubts. Yet the story takes a turn into justice and rehabilitation themes. After release on probation in December, Jobson violated her terms and was returned to custody within 6 months. That relapse deepens the narrative. The promise of re-entry, the fragility of supervision, the pitfalls of underestimating risk. Case 11. Sophia Koval. A single, icy moment freezes the blood. Late night at a Lauderdale Lakes home on May 23, 2024, a 14-year-old girl is found standing beside her unconscious, elderly grandmother. Authorities would soon call it homicide, the teenager her own granddaughter accused of manslaughter. Investigators learned that Sophia had recently emigrated from Ukraine and had witnessed the harrowing realities of war, experiences her father linked to escalating behavioral issues. When deputies searched the scene following her arrest, they discovered her grandmother, 79-year-old Sophia Koval, with multiple bruises. An autopsy would confirm those injuries resulted in homicide. According to arrest documents, Sophia allegedly used a belt and her grandmother's walker as weapons. In moments of confessional remorse, she reportedly told her father she had attacked her grandmother because the elderly woman was already dying. A disturbing claim that reveals a tangled rationale of perceived mercy or justification, swirling beneath the surface of youthful confusion and trauma. The Broward County Sheriff's Office Homicide Unit initiated the initial inquiry into the unresponsive grandmother, and within hours, Sophia was identified as the suspect. By October 1st, prosecutors formally charged her as an adult with manslaughter, transferring the case to adult court despite her age. At a magistrate hearing, probable cause was found and she was held without bond in protective custody. On October 30th, Sophia pleaded no contest to manslaughter. The plea was part of negotiations between prosecutors, the defense, and the victim's family, with the father delivering a deeply emotional impact statement in court. He had lost both his mother and his daughter. He supported the negotiated outcome and expressed gratitude to all involved. A no-contest plea meant Sophia did not dispute the charge but waived key rights, including appeal and a trial with understanding. That sentencing hearing pivoted between accountability and compassion. She was ordered to serve up to 3 years in Florida's Department of Juvenile Justice Maximum Risk Commitment Program, the harshest available juvenile sanction, followed by community supervision until age 21. The judge warned that any violation of her sentence terms could trigger transfer back to adult court with exposure to a 10 to 15-year prison sentence. Because she is not a U.S. citizen, it is expected that upon completing her custodial sentence, Sophia will be deported to Ukraine. Case 12, Charlie Elely. A single sentence can pull you into the darkest of stories, and this one does just that. Charlie Elely stood by the fire pit in her own backyard, her face a mask of shock and grief, as investigators combed through the ashes of a life-altering crime scene. From the beginning, the moment Charlie Eley's conviction was vacated is as riveting as any drama. She had been 18 when convicted in the murder of Seth Jackson. He was beaten, shot, and burned in her oak-treated yard. Though she played no role in the killing, cleanup, or any aspect of the atrocity, the conviction held. She spent 9 years behind bars at Lowell Correctional Institution before a judge ruled her original attorney had been ineffective, paving the way for her release via a plea arrangement. This case poses deep, unsettling questions. How does someone so young get swept into such a violent event without participation, and yet bear the life sentence consequences? Defense attorney Jose Baez characterized her as a victim of circumstance, entangled with the wrong associative circle, not the crime itself. Through the investigation, officers pieced together what few facts there were. Though specifics are largely withheld in the public record, it's clear her proximity to the crime clouded judgments and shifted the case from perpetrator to participant. The public's expectations, prosecutors' assumptions, and the relentless focus on one person's proximity illustrate how investigative strategy can sometimes misfire when context is lacking. The conviction stood for nearly a decade, years when Charlie's life was effectively halted. Trial testimony from the actual players in the crime placed her at the scene, and the jury concluded her presence, regardless of action, was sufficient for life sentence. Only through appellate review did it come to light that her counsel's performance was deficient. The court's recognition of that failure disrupted the closure of that verdict and opened the door for a plea option, leaving the courtroom both triumphant and hollow. During the sentencing hearing, one can imagine the tension. An 18-year-old standing before a judge facing life without parole, the emotional weight crushing. Then fast forward 9 years, same person standing in the same courtroom, this time not facing further confinement but liberation. That contrast speaks volumes about justice's ebb and flow and how human error in legal representation, in prosecutorial judgment, can shift fates. Elely held no formal role in Seth Jackson's murder, yet paid the price. Her story becomes emblematic of broader themes in criminal justice. How individuals entangled by association may suffer disproportionately, the importance of effective counsel, and how appeals can correct overwhelmingly flawed verdicts. Case 13. Sierra Halsith. It begins with an electrifying moment. A teenage couple, lying side by side in a makeshift tent, casually announcing to a hidden camera, "It's now been 3 days since murdering someone." One of them quips with unsettling calm. That chilling confession becomes the linchpin of a complex investigation that would soon grip a community. On April 9, 2021, firefighters discover a smoldering garage in northwest Las Vegas. Its owner's body inside, after suffering more than 70 stab wounds, later concluded to be Daniel Halsith, stabbed, mutilated, and then burned in a grim attempt to conceal the crime. Authorities quickly focus on 2 suspects: his own 16-year-old daughter Sierra and her 18-year-old boyfriend, Aaron Guerrero. Sierra Halsith and Guerrero had been in a relationship from June to December 2020, and upon being barred from seeing each other, began plotting a run to Los Angeles, and more frighteningly, robbery and homicide. Security footage and receipts show them purchasing saws, bleach, lighter fluid, disposable gloves, and other materials used in the crime. As the couple fled, surveillance shows them driving away in Daniel's blue Nissan Altima. Sierra even crafted deceptive messages to her grandmother about her father's well-being, while withdrawals from a shared bank account escalated suspicion. Legal proceedings accelerated when on April 13th, they were apprehended in Salt Lake City, arrested for fare evasion on light rail, nowhere near suspects at large. Authorities discovered the video and vehicle evidence, and their phones revealed the incriminating confession video. In court, their psychological profile became part defense, part revelation. Aaron claimed he was under the influence of LSD at the time, describing it as a psychological drug that magnified his mental instability. He admitted it was a joint idea but said sobriety might have prevented the tragedy. Trial testimony centered on their pleas. Although initially not guilty, in May 2022 both pled guilty to 9 felony counts, murder, arson, robbery among them, and accepted a sentence of life in prison with the possibility of parole after 22 years, along with $5,000 in restitution. At the sentencing hearing, emotion and restraint collided. The victim's family mourned openly, describing a devoted father torn from them in a violent and senseless act. The video and its lack of remorse drove home the gravity of the psychological detachment at play. Case 14, Gregg. It begins mid-scene. Surveillance footage frames a still home. A teenage figure moves into view, clutching something hidden behind her back. Seconds pass. 3 silenced shots shatter the silence. In the next moment, the girl is texting casually at the kitchen counter, her 2 dogs at her side. On March 19, 2024, 15-year-old Carly Madison Gregg carried out a shocking act of violence in her parents' Brandon, Mississippi home, fatally shooting her mother, Ashley Smiley, a high school math teacher, and attempting to ambush her stepfather, Heath Smiley. After the fatal shots, she sent a text to lure her stepfather home, and then another to a friend, asking, "Have you ever seen a dead body?" before leading them to the scene. The crime scene and the chilling behavior immediately cast a stark light on the psychological profile of someone who could act with such unsettling calm. Jurors were shown surveillance footage that revealed Carly pacing the house, weapon concealed, followed by gunshots and her return to the kitchen, as if nothing had changed. The evidence painted a portrait of a teenager not acting in a moment of chaos, but rather executing a cold, calculated act. Yet the defense raised the psychological profile. Dr. Andrew Clark testified Carly suffered from depression, dissociation, auditory hallucinations, and numbing medication effects. She'd experienced blackouts, self-harm, and migrating mental symptoms worsened by a medication change just days before. Prosecutors argued she was fully aware of her actions, presenting the journal entries. "There is no God. It's okay to be evil. You don't need family." Words the prosecution said revealed intent rather than insanity. The jury took only 2 hours to deliberate after 4 to 5 days of testimony, convicting her on first-degree murder, attempted murder, and evidence tampering. The sentencing hearing delivered the emotional peak. Carly, once giggling in court and oddly composed during testimony, sobbed as the life without parole sentence was handed down. Her father, Gregg, later spoke out, expressing shame and sadness, while insisting she understood her actions at the time. From there, focus shifted to post-conviction legal developments. Her attorneys filed for a new trial, presenting new evidence from her biological father and mental health history. But in October 2024, a judge denied the request, deeming it insufficient to alter the outcome. In April 2025, she retained new counsel James Murphy, who pledged to challenge a system that, in his view, chewed her up and spat her out. The appeal is now pending before the Mississippi Supreme Court, introducing a possible path toward rehabilitation, or at least further legal scrutiny, though much remains uncertain. Case 15. Shyla Camila Hernandez Rivas. It all began with the crackle of tension. An Instagram message, a teenage fight escalated into tragedy. That instant tugs you into the moment. On February 19, 2023, hours before sundown, two 14-year-olds agree to settle a feud in front of a home on Soft Winds Drive in Reno when the digital dare crossed into fatal reality. Investigation uncovered video from multiple Ring cameras and phone footage that captured every chilling second. A split-second decision turned a schoolyard dare into deadly consequence. When the confrontation erupted, Shyla Hernandez Rivas withdrew a knife within moments of the fight's start. Chloe Edwards, stunned, collapsed. Emergency responders rushed to Chloe's home, but she died in the front yard. The psychological profile was laid bare in court when forensic psychologist Dr. Martha Mahaffey painted a haunting portrait of a young mind unprepared for the weight of that moment. Hernandez Rivas, then 15, was deemed emotionally immature, with the mental capacity of an 11-year-old. Diagnosed with depression, she had begun drinking at 12 and was smoking marijuana by 13 in an attempt to cope. Despite the defense's plea for mitigating context, prosecutors highlighted a more calculated layer. Body camera recordings in which Hernandez Rivas is heard saying, "I got that bitch," while Chloe lay dying. It was a moment that crystallized intent, pushing the legal proceedings toward adult sentencing. She pleaded guilty to challenge to fight with a deadly weapon, resulting in death in December 2023. The sentencing hearing that followed in February 2024 carried the emotional weight of erupting grief and quiet regret. Judge Kathleen Drakulik, reviewing the video evidence, emphasized that the facts were undeniable. Impact statements echoed through the court. Chloe's sister Alexis, stricken with loss, contrasted her dead sister's breath with the cold silence of a courtroom. Chloe's mother described patterns of bullying and heartbreak that lingered like a shadow. The judge delivered a sentence designed to reflect both justice and the severity of the act. 50 years in prison, with parole eligibility after 20. The sentence reflects the maximum allowed under Nevada law, affirming that a knife wielded by a minor can far exceed the boundaries of childhood. That decision led to an appeal to the Nevada Supreme Court, where the legal proceedings extended into a critical examination of juvenile justice. Hernandez Rivas argued her mental immaturity should strip the court of jurisdiction. The court affirmed certification, chronological age, not mental age, governs the standard. She also challenged the denial of a mandatory minimum reduction under NRS 176.017(2), which permits sentence reduction based on age and rehabilitation prospects. The court found no abuse of discretion. The sentence, while severe, was within statutory limits and not cruel or unusual. If these stories made you think twice, if they gripped you, shocked you, or left you craving to know what lies beneath the surface, hit that subscribe button now and join the Mindframe True Crimes family. Every week, we dive deeper into the hidden corridors of the human mind, unraveling the truths behind the headlines and the secrets even courtrooms can't fully reveal. And to all my loyal subscribers and returning viewers, thank you for keeping your mind in the frame. You're the reason we can keep shining a light into the world's darkest corners. Stay safe, stay vigilant, and remember, the mind is the most dangerous place of all. This is Mindframe True Crimes. Until next time.